Now that we know why posing is so important in animation, it's time for us to begin creating our first pose. But before we start setting the keys, I'll quickly go over the rig and explain how its different controls work, since it is our first time using a complex rigged character. Let's open our file Assignment Section 3. Here we see our character, which is a marionette. We can call him Woody. In my scene, as well as in your scene, you can probably see these arrows going through our character's body. These are the digital bones of our 3D model, which we discussed in our previous section. So here, I just wanted to remind you of them since we didn't have a full bones and joint system in our previous rig of the plane. When working with different rigs and objects, you might see many components that came with the object and are an essential part of the structure that lets you move the object. But you don't necessarily need to see them since you won't be using them yourself. As an animator, all you'll need to be concerned with are controls, which are made of NURBS curves, and your 3D model, which is made out of polygons. In order not to be distracted by other components, you might want to filter what's visible in the viewport, and you can do that by going to the Viewports menu to Show, and then selecting and deselecting different types of components from the list, which you want to see or hide. Usually, the best way to do that quickly is to click on None, and then select NURBS curves and polygons. In our case, we also need to select Locators, because our character's knees are controlled with them. Also, if you ever need to create a path of action again, also known as a motion trail, but you're not able to see it, look at this list. Perhaps its visibility is turned off. Here you can also turn the visibility for the grease pencil, which you can use to draw on top of your viewport to mark something, or in our exercise, if you want, you can use it to draw the line of action to help you analyze the pose and its variations before creating it. The grease pencil tool itself can be found here. All right, let's go over the controls. This bigger circle in the middle of the body is responsible for placing the character in space. And that is usually the first thing you want to do. You can move it and rotate it, and that way determine the main direction as well as the weight of the body. In some rigs, this can also be called the root control. Then we have an even bigger circle at the bottom. Here it's called base. In other cases, it can be named global or world control, but usually we don't animate it, so just leave it. Let's take a closer look at the feet. You can move and rotate the feet by selecting this control. When the foot is moved, the rest of the leg follows it. But you need to adjust the knee position by selecting this control so that it's facing the same direction that your foot has. So if your foot is rotated to the side, your knee should be facing the same direction. If you take a look at the channel box of the foot, you'll see a channel called Foot Roll. This gives you an easy way to lift the foot either from the heel or from the toes. But if you need to move the toes independently, you can use this smaller control. Going up, we have the hips control, or pelvis, which can be rotated. Then we have the chest control, which helps us pose the torso. And at the top, we have the head. Finally, we have the hands, which work in an opposite way than the feet, since we can just rotate them, but the rest of the arm stays in place. Here we need to start working from the shoulder down. We rotate the shoulder to position the arm. Then we have an elbow, which we can rotate just in one axis, which is the axis Y, And that's because our elbows only bend in one way. In the future, if you get a model with the elbows that can rotate in all three axes, you should select two of the rotation channels and lock them yourself. Then, at the end of our bone chain, we have the hand or the wrist, which we can rotate. And in the hand, we have a couple more controls to bend the fingers, which are actually a one plane and a thumb. If you select both controls for the fingers by holding down Shift and clicking, and rotate them together, it will give you a more natural and pronounced bending than just rotating the tips would. And that was our rig overview. In the next lesson, we'll start posing our character.